Welcome everyone. My name is Steve Ray from the Group Work Centre, and today we're going to be looking at collaborative leadership. We've called this session How to Create a Bold and Dynamic Team. And this is our first webinar. We haven't done one before, so bear with us as we go through any technological challenges. We're actually here in Zoom, and what we're going to do is answer some questions at the end. You're all on mute. Your video's been turned off just so that you can concentrate on the content. Just like to start with an acknowledgement to country, and just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today. And we meet on many lands, obviously, because we're coming from all different places. And just want to pay my respects to the elders past, present, emerging, and in particular give thanks for their custodianship of the land, their connection to country, which at group work, it's a very important part of the work that we do. Connection to country, connection to ourselves, connection to others. And it's really the heart of collaboration too. So we're going to be touching on that as we work through the next 45 minutes or so together. So let's get into it. Let's start having a look at some of the slides that we're prepared to just take us through the various themes of the day. And I'll just have to screen share. Hopefully we're all shared at this point. Just double check. Yes, sorry. Just got to click that button, share. Very important, that. Okay, here we go. So, how to create a bold and dynamic team. Even those words, bold and dynamic, they can be quite kind of confronting in many ways. But for us, the heart of collaboration is getting to a place where that's the kind of characteristics, they're the kind of qualities you're going to see in people in your team: bold, dynamic, people who are prepared to take risks and so forth. And this is actually a fantastic thing that you want to be able to encourage if you can. The real trick is, how do you do it in a way that makes sure that you as leader feel that things aren't out of control, so to speak. So let's just keep moving on, and we'll find out how we do that. So first, the purpose of this session, we're going to give you greater insight into what it means to be a collaborative leader. Secondly, you'll go away with this greater understanding and appreciation of the complexity of being a collaborative leader. It's a big field. There's a lot to it. And obviously, we're just having a bit of a taster here today. But you'll certainly get a sense of just how deep you can go into this area. And finally, we want to leave you, of course, with some practical tools so that you can start exploring the field, and you can really have a go and know that it's not that hard actually to step into this space. It's a bit of a mind shift often from traditional leadership approaches, but it's very exciting and it's very empowering, the people that you're working with. Some takeaways. There'll be the slides of this session, obviously, including the keys, what we call the keys of collaborative leadership, the big ones anyway. There'll be a couple of PDFs. One is how to run agreements, which are kind of a foundation stone of applying your collaborative leadership style. And finally, a micro skills PDF. These are the kind of the communication skills that can really make the difference between you as a manager and you as a facilitator and leader. So yeah, I guess in terms of the outcomes, it's going to be very much dependent upon what time you then put into continuing to explore this area, how much you apply what we give today. So, bold and dynamic, big words. For us, it goes to the heart of a quality which we think is fundamental to people who are working in the collaborative space. Now, collaboration is a word that's been spoken about a lot. There's a lot to it, really, because to collaborate really well doesn't mean just working really well together when everything's hunky-dory. It means that when you get into tough times, you've got the emotional resilience to move through it. And our definition of emotional resilience is this one: the capacity to be bold, to speak up, to share our ideas, take risks, and use our full potential. Emotional resilience gives you greater strength to respond appropriately to pressures and challenges, and helps to build robust collaborative relationships. Sounds good, but how do you do it? Particularly this thing about responding appropriately to pressures and challenges, because we all know how to react in certain situations, and it's one of the real challenges and growth areas for people who want to work in a space where you can be at times quite challenged. So first thing I want to talk about is this idea of power sharing when we're talking about collaborative leadership and collaboration generally. It's for us at GroupWork Centre, the big theme is in collaboration all about how you share power and how you give it away in a sense. It's an unusual thing to do, and it's often seen as a way that you might lose control. But for us, it's actually all about how you equalise power so that everybody has the opportunity to step into their kind of inner leader, if you like. So our belief is that there are a lot of people who have great leadership capacity. Perhaps everyone has this, but because of structural roles that we have, think that they are unable to do that, or frustrated in the role that they're in, where if within the leadership role that you might take, you are able to do some of that power sharing of the role, the authority of the role that you're in, be it team leader, manager, director, chief executive, there's a very interesting dynamic shift that can happen in other people. But it takes you to make that first step, because unless you kind of step away or offer that opportunity for people to step into sharing some of that power and authority with you, it's very hard for them to move into the space. You have to move away a little bit. It is a little bit radical, and it's not something that's widely adopted in organisations generally, although great leaders do it effortlessly. It's kind of a natural thing. I think it's a kind of a duty of good leaders in the field to be doing this, and give that opportunity for people to step into responsibility that they may not be currently taking. So, what else? Yeah, I suppose in terms of this little graphic that we've got here, we're really trying to help people to, blossom in whatever capacities they may have. And we wanted to enable people. We don't want to unconsciously disable people. If you're in a particular management role, that can happen, and not in a negative way necessarily. It's just that people just feel like, oh, this is the role that I play, and that's it. They put limits on themselves, which is reinforced by the structural roles that are there. That doesn't need to be the case. We want to help people to take risks, to go beyond those limitations, and to start to rely on their own inner wisdom. A lot of people have no idea of what their potential is, but when somebody in a leadership position starts to encourage them to do that, then it's amazing the change that can happen. But we're talking about bring out the best in people. In a way, it's a bit like being a gardener as a collaborative leader. Really, the role of collaborative leader is to create other collaborative leaders. This is just a fundamental part of healthy and mature organisations, that they're creating the opportunity for succession within their organisation. I mean, people aren't going to move through the organisation, move up into leadership positions. They're not going to do that well unless they're encouraged, mentored, supported in some way. So you can do that if you embrace this whole collaborative ethos. So you know, there are things that can happen along the way. Just to take that gardening metaphor a little bit further, we want to create an ecosystem where it's possible for collaboration to flourish, but at the same time, you know, weeds can come up, um, troubles, and we want to be able to name those things that aren't working in that collaborative space and do something about it. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about how you do that as well. And the how is the most important thing. Now, this is the work that I do all the time. I teach a short 2-day course that we run on collaborative leadership. And it's a very common thing for people to want to move into a space where they can practice a lot of this stuff. And that's what we do on those 2 days. So you can check that out on our website. Anyway, we've got a course coming out in the near future. So, two main skill sets that we want to grow in people: self-awareness and open and honest communication. These are critical things. So we're talking about growing them in your people. We're talking about growing in ourselves. It's really critical that you have them in yourself, of course. How else can you grow them in the people within your team? So self-awareness. So this is a really big one. It's an interesting one. It's hard to kind of summarize what happens in that self-awareness space. But essentially what we're talking about is the way that you perceive the world. Some people, if I just draw a sharp line between people who are, you know, perhaps not self-aware and people who are more self-aware, people who are less self-aware or not self-aware perceive the world generally as being out there, and things happen to you, and your capacity to actually be an agent in all of that is actually quite limited or dependent upon what's happening out in your environment, the people you come in contact with, and often the language of people who aren't particularly self-aware will be about how things didn't go well, and it might be that there's blame associated with circumstances that haven't gone well, like, you know, it didn't work out because we didn't have the right room or the right space. It didn't work out because there was a particular person in the room which made it really difficult. It didn't work out because we weren't given the briefing notes in time, etc., etc. Now, I'm not saying that those things aren't factors. They're often very important factors. But a person who is, you know, really aware of, you know, they're self-aware, they're aware of what they bring into any situation, they're able to reflect and say, okay, so all those things happened, but what did I do? What did I bring to that situation? What could I have done better? From that position, you have great capacity to influence your environment. If it's all about what's happening out there, you kind of disempower yourself. So for us, self-awareness is a really critical part, because the more that you start looking internally, the more you're able to actually then say, wow, I've got the capacity to influence a whole lot of things actually that I didn't realize. And so that starts to happen the more you start reflecting on what is it that I could have done. The second thing to go alongside this is, you know, this idea of open and honest communication. And people often talk about, oh, it's really important to have open and honest communication. Well, without self-awareness, it's almost impossible to have true open and honest communication, because it will be through the lens of, well, I'm prepared to be open and honest, but you are the one who did that thing to me. So it's honest in terms of how you perceive what's going on out there. The true open and honest communication is combining the self-awareness with different ways of communicating that really help other people to step into their self-awareness as well, and reflect. So these things are really critical elements as you start going forward and developing and nurturing this collaborative culture and creating this collaborative environment in which people can grow.